You lost, honey. The spa's for guests only. Not. She waved one hand in a slow circle, eyes moving up and down. Walk-ins. The girl in the lobby said nothing. She stood with both hands around the strap of a worn canvas backpack, sneakers scuffed at the toe, hair pulled back in a plain rubber band. She looked like she'd taken 3 buses to get here. Maybe she had. I have a reservation, she said quietly. Suite 1204. The woman behind the front desk, Cheryl Boone, mid-40s, white 16 years in hospitality and proud of every one of them, silver name tag catching the chandelier light, let out a short breath through her nose. Not quite a laugh. Close enough. Sweetheart, 1204 is our rooftop suite, presidential level. That's a 2,800s a night room. She tilted her head. You sure you have the right hotel? The girl looked at her. Her expression didn't change. The Callaway Grand, 112 West Peachtree. Yes, I have the right hotel. Cheryl typed something on the keyboard, slowly, the way people type when they're not actually looking for what you asked for. I'm not seeing anything under. What was the name? Iris Voss. More typing. A pause. I'm not finding it. Try the corporate account. Voss Hospitality Group. Cheryl's fingers stopped. She looked at the screen, then at the girl, then at the screen again. She had no idea who she had just made feel small in the lobby of the hotel that girl's family had owned for 11 years. And what was about to happen over the next 4 hours would cost Cheryl Boone and 2 other people she trusted everything they had built. Iris Voss woke up that morning in a Hampton Inn 20 minutes outside of Atlanta. Not because she couldn't afford better. She could afford almost anything within reason. And a few things outside it. She stayed at the Hampton because she didn't want anyone at the Callaway Grand to know she was coming. She was 23 years old. Mixed race, her mother Korean-American, her father a white man from Savannah who had started Voss Hospitality Group with 1 motel off I-85 and 32 years of stubbornness. She had her mother's cheekbones and her father's eyes, the kind of pale gray that made people look twice and then look away. She stood 5'4" in flat shoes. She was wearing flat shoes today, jeans with a small tear at the left knee, a gray pullover with the hood bunched at the collar. The backpack was from her sophomore year of college. She had kept it on purpose. Her father, David Voss, had handed over operations of the Callaway Grand to her 14 months ago. It was one of 8 properties in the Voss portfolio, but it was the crown. 19 floors, rooftop bar, award-winning restaurant, 240 rooms and a reputation that had taken a decade to build. The Callaway Grand's TripAdvisor rating had dropped 0.4 of a point in the last 6 months. 0.4 sounds small. In luxury hospitality, 0.4 is a cliff. Guest complaints had spiked, not about the rooms. The rooms were immaculate. The complaints were about the staff. Cold check-in experiences. Being made to feel judged. Being treated differently, depending on how they looked when they walked through the door. Her director of operations, a man named Curtis Albright, had reviewed the complaints and submitted a report that said the issues were isolated, random, nothing systemic. Iris had read the report twice. Then she packed the backpack, drove to the Hampton, and went to sleep early. She wasn't looking for random. She was looking for a system. She arrived at the Callaway Grand at 10:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, dressed the way she'd dressed, carrying what she carried, and she walked through the revolving door like any other guest who wasn't sure if she belonged there. The lobby was everything she'd designed it to be. High ceilings, warm amber lighting, a long marble front desk with brushed brass fixtures, a cascading arrangement of white orchids in a stone vase near the elevator bank. She had chosen those orchids herself, approved the arrangement, specified the vase. She stood near the entrance for 2 full minutes and just watched. A man in a business suit was checked in by a smiling associate in under 90 seconds. A couple with 2 young children were helped immediately when one of the kids knocked over a lobby display. Then a black woman in her late 60s, wearing a church cardigan and carrying a small rolling suitcase, approached the desk. She waited and waited. Cheryl Boone was standing 3 feet away, arranging something behind the counter, clearly aware the woman was there. 40 seconds. 50. A full minute. Finally, the woman said, "Excuse me, I believe I have a reservation." Cheryl looked up with the expression of someone interrupted in the middle of something important. "One moment," she said flatly. Then she turned and walked to the back office. She was gone for 2 minutes. When she returned, she brought no answer, just resumed typing without acknowledging the woman again. Iris watched the whole thing from across the lobby. She didn't move, she filed it. Then she walked to the desk herself. That's when Cheryl delivered the spa line. And then the sweet comment. And then the slowly typed non-search. And then the silence after Iris said, "Voss Hospitality Group," a silence that was its own kind of answer. "One moment," Cheryl said. She picked up the desk phone and called someone. Her voice dropped. Iris heard the words "some girl" and "corporate account," and that was enough. A man appeared from the back corridor 2 minutes later. Tall, early 40s, sandy-haired, wearing a gray blazer that was slightly too tight across the shoulders. His name tag said Brett, Guest Relations Manager, Brett Dunham. He had been at the Callaway Grand for 3 years and was by every metric Iris had seen on paper, performing well. He looked at Iris. Something in his face adjusted, recalibrated downward. "Hi there," he said. The hi there of someone who has already decided you're going to be a problem. "How can I help you today?" "I have a reservation. Iris Voss. Suite 1204. He smiled. Patient, slow, the smile you give someone you're about to disappoint for their own good. "I totally understand. Can you tell me, how did you book this room?" "Through the corporate account, Dop." "Right, so the corporate account that's a business account. It's tied to our ownership group. That's not typically accessible to. I just want to make sure we have everything sorted before we." "My name is Iris Voss," she said again. Quiet, level. "The account is under Voss Hospitality Group. I'd like to check in." Brett clicked through the reservation system. She watched his face change when he found it, a small tightening around the eyes. "I am seeing something here," he said slowly. "But I'm going to need to make a quick call to verify. You understand?" She did understand. She understood completely. "Of course," she said. She stepped to the side and waited. She pulled out her phone and opened her email. She did not look anxious. She did not look impatient. She stood with her backpack and her scuffed sneakers, and she waited the way people wait when they have nowhere else to be and nothing left to prove. Across the lobby, the woman in the church cardigan had finally been checked in by a different associate. Iris watched her walk slowly toward the elevators, rolling suitcase trailing behind her. She moved with the careful economy of someone who had been made to feel like an inconvenience for so long that she'd learned to take up as little space as possible. Iris turned back to the desk. Brett was still on the phone. His voice was quiet, but she caught the phrase "young Asian girl" and then a pause and then a shorter version of the silence that always means the same thing. He hung up. He came back to the counter. "Ms. Voss," he said. The tone had shifted. Not quite apology, more like recalibration. "Your suite is ready. I apologize for the wait." "What was the call for?" she asked. "Just standard verification." "Do you run standard verification on every guest who requests Suite 1204? A beat. We have a protocol for corporate-level bookings. I'd like to see that protocol in writing," she said, "before I go upstairs." Brett blinked. Sure, of course. I'll have that printed for you." She knew there was no written protocol. He knew she knew. She took her key card. She went upstairs. The suite was perfect. It always was. She stood at the floor-to-ceiling window and looked out at the Atlanta skyline. For a long moment, city spread out below her in the late morning light, glass and steel catching the sun. Then she sat on the edge of the bed and sent one message to her assistant, a woman named Joy Osei, who had worked for the Voss family for 6 years. "Joy, I need the full personnel files for Cheryl Boone, Brett Dunham, and any associate who handled a guest complaint in the last 6 months. Pull the security footage from the lobby for the last 3 weeks, and find out who else besides Curtis signed off on his operations report." Joy replied in under a minute. "Already on it. Do you want legal on standby?" Iris typed back, "Yes." Then she set the phone down, lay back on top of the duvet in her jeans and her gray pullover, and stared at the ceiling. She had built her own career the same way her father built his, from the bottom. While other kids her age were doing semesters abroad, she spent her junior year managing the front desk rotation at a Voss motel in Macon. She knew what it felt like to stand on both sides of a hotel counter. She knew the weight of someone's gaze when they decided who you were before you opened your mouth. She had tried to build something different here. She had spent 14 months thinking she had. She had not. She went back downstairs at 1 p.m. Same outfit, same backpack. This time she went to the Callaway Grand's restaurant on the second floor, a place called Ember, which was supposed to be the jewel of the property. White tablecloths. Dim lighting at lunch, a menu she'd spent 3 months developing with the head chef. She sat at a table near the window. She waited. 5 minutes. No one came. 2 tables over, a party of 4 in business attire was attended to within 90 seconds of sitting down. Minas appeared. Water appeared. The server, young, white, early 20s, the kind of professional warmth that looks effortless, smiled and said, "Welcome, take your time." Iris waited. 7 minutes. She counted. A different server finally appeared. She was looking at her order pad when she arrived, not at Iris. "You ready to order?" "No welcome, no menu, no water." "May I see a menu?" Iris asked. The server, her name tag said Taylor, looked up then, made a quick assessment. "We don't really do," she started, then seemed to rethink mid-sentence. "Let me grab you one." She came back with a menu. No water. Iris ordered the roasted chicken and a sparkling water. The chicken arrived 22 minutes later. The table beside hers, seated 3 minutes after her, had already received their food and was halfway through it. She looked at her plate. The chicken was dry, sliced too thin, edges curling. The roasted vegetables underneath were cold, the kind of cold that means they'd been sitting somewhere. The sparkling water had been poured flat into a glass, no bottle, no ice. She took one bite, set her fork down. She looked toward the kitchen. Through the small window in the service door, she could see the expo station. A man in a chef's coat was plating food. He was laughing at something someone said off to the side. He didn't look at Iris's plate going out. She took a photo of the food with her phone. Then she flagged Taylor down. "Is something wrong?" Taylor asked. Her tone was the restaurant version of Brett's lobby smile. Carefully neutral, already bracing. "Yes," Iris said. "Can you get me your manager?" Taylor looked at her. Then she walked away without answering. A man appeared 4 minutes later. Heavyset, mid-50s, wearing a manager's jacket with the Callaway Grand crest on the breast pocket. His name tag said Ray Costello, food and beverage director. He had been with the property since before David Voss bought it. He had stayed on through the transition. He stood across the table from Iris without sitting down. "Is there a problem?" "This chicken has been sitting out," Iris said. "The vegetables are cold. The water is flat." I waited 9 minutes before a server came to my table. The table next to mine was seated after me and served before me. Ray Costello looked at the plate, then at Iris. His expression was the very specific expression of someone who has already decided your complaint doesn't count. "Our kitchen can get backed up at lunch," he said. "The other tables didn't get backed up. I'm not sure what you observed, but I observed it from this chair," Iris said. "For 40 minutes. Ray's jaw shifted slightly. "I can offer you a complimentary dessert." Iris looked at him for a long moment. "No thank you," she said. "I'd like the check." He brought it himself. She paid cash. She tipped Taylor 20% because Taylor had done the bare minimum and she wasn't Taylor's problem to solve. Then she went back upstairs. She texted Joy again. "Add Ray Costello to the file. F&B director. All guest complaints related to Ember for the last year. All performance reviews." Then she went to the window and looked at the skyline again. The sun had moved. The city looked different from up here at 2 p.m. than it had at 11 a.m. flatter. More ordinary. She had not come here to be angry. She had come here to see clearly. And she was seeing clearly now. This was not 3 people having bad days. This was culture. A culture where guests who looked like they mattered got the water without being asked, got the welcome without waiting, got the benefit of every single doubt. And guests who didn't look like they mattered got the flat water in a glass, the cold chicken, the slow walk to the counter, the "are you sure you have the right hotel" smile. A culture that Ray Costello had been running for years, that Brett Dunham had learned from someone, that Cheryl Boone had settled into like a comfortable chair, and a culture that Curtis Albright had looked at, written a report about, and called hot isolated. She sent one more message, not to Joy, to a number in her phone listed simply as DAD. "It's what I thought. I need a week and the full audit team." He replied in less than 10 seconds, "You have whatever you need. You always did." She set the phone face down on the dresser and sat in the chair by the window. Outside, Atlanta went on being Atlanta. Down on the street, 20 stories below, people moved in and out of the revolving door of the hotel her father had built into something worth trusting. She thought about the woman in the church cardigan, waiting at the desk, waiting with the patience of someone who had always had to wait. She thought about how a hotel is supposed to work, how every person who walks through the door is supposed to feel, the moment they come in from whatever they came in from, that someone is glad they're here. She had about 36 hours of work ahead of her. She was ready. By Thursday morning, the Callaway Grand looked the same from the outside. Same lobby, same orchids, same chandelier, throwing gold light across the marble floor. But inside, something had shifted. Joy Osai had arrived Wednesday evening with 2 members of Voss's internal audit team and a woman named Diane Cho, the company's head of HR. They worked through the night. Security footage, register logs, complaint tickets, exit interview records for the 11 staff members who had left the property in the last 14 months. 3 of those 11 had cited the same manager by name in their exit interviews. Not Cheryl. Not Brett, Ray Costello. The F&B director who had been there before David Voss bought the property, who had watched 4 general managers come and go, who had quietly become the person everyone else calibrated to. The guest complaint records told the rest. Over 18 months, Ember had received 47 complaints about service inconsistency. 31 of those complaints had been submitted by guests who identified as a racial minority, elderly, or visibly non-business class. 30 of those 31 had been closed by Ray Costello himself, marked resolved, no action required, without a single follow-up to the guest. 6 of those guests had also complained about their front desk experience. 3 of the 6 had mentioned Cheryl Boone by name. And Brett Dunham, the guest relations manager whose entire job was to make problems go away, had filed not one escalation report in 14 months. Not one. His performance review, written by Curtis Albright, called him a consummate professional and guest experience ambassador. Curtis Albright, it turned out, had been to dinner twice with Ray Costello's son, who worked in city permitting. It wasn't corruption exactly. It was the other thing, the quieter thing, the version where you don't have to lie, you just don't have to look too hard. Iris read every document sitting in the suite in her same jeans and her same gray pullover, notes open on her laptop, coffee going cold beside her. She called Diane just after 7 a.m. "I'm ready." At 9 a.m. on Thursday, Iris Voss walked back into the lobby of the Callaway Grand. This time she was wearing the same sneakers and the same jeans, but the backpack was gone. And she walked differently. Not faster, not louder, just with the certainty of someone who has already made the decisions that need to be made. Cheryl Boone was at the desk. She looked up when Iris came in, and for one moment something behind her eyes flickered. A kind of half-recognition, the feeling of a memory that doesn't quite surface. Then Iris walked past the desk, past the elevator bank, and through the door marked "Staff Only" at the far end of the lobby. The back corridor smelled like industrial cleaner and warming trays. She'd been through it twice before, years ago, when her father first showed her the property. She remembered the layout. She walked to the small conference room at the end of the hall, where Joy and Diane were already seated. 2 members of corporate security stood near the door, calm-faced, in dark blazers. Brett Dunham came in first, because Joy had called him in. He walked with his usual confidence, straightening his gray blazer, probably expecting a midweek guest issue. He stopped when he saw Iris, looked at her face, looked at Joy, looked at Iris again. "Hi, Brett," Iris said. "Have a seat." He sat down slowly, like the chair might give way. Diane opened a folder and placed a single printed sheet in front of him. Guest complaint log. 14 months. His name on the closed without action column 38 times. "You want to tell me about your verification protocol?" Iris said. "The one for corporate-level bookings?" Brett's face went through several things very quickly. "Ms. Voss, I didn't know who you—" "I know you didn't," she said. "But the guests in those 47 complaints knew who they were, and they deserved the same answer regardless." She let that land. "You don't work here anymore, Brett. HR will walk you through the separation process. Please don't go back to the lobby." He left. He didn't try to argue. The argument had already been decided before he walked into the room. Ray Costello came in next. He was less surprised. Older men who have survived a long time in rooms like this develop a kind of weather sense about when the weather is changing. He sat down heavily, looked at the complaint logs Diane slid across the table, and said, "I stand behind every one of those resolutions." "I know you do," Iris said. "That's why you're not standing behind this desk anymore." Cheryl Boone cried, genuinely, messily, in a way that was hard to watch. She kept saying she had 32 years in the industry. She kept saying she'd never had a complaint filed against her personally. Diane, gently, placed a document in front of her showing 3 guest complaints that mentioned her by name. All closed without contact, all submitted in the last 8 months. Cheryl looked at the paper. Then she looked at Iris. Some guests. You can tell they're going to be difficult, you know? You learn that after enough time. You learn to read people," Iris said. "Yes, exactly. And the woman in the church cardigan yesterday. What did you read?" Cheryl's mouth opened. Nothing came. "Her name is Audrey Simmons," Iris said. "She's 71 years old. She drove here from Savannah for her granddaughter's college graduation. She stayed at this hotel 3 times in the last 4 years. She's a loyalty member. She left a review last night." Iris paused. "She said she's not coming back." Cheryl stared at the table. "You had a good job," Iris said. "It wasn't cruel. It wasn't loud. And this is what you did with it." Curtis Albright was the last one. He came in already defensive, already rehearsing. He used the word nuanced 4 times in the first 90 seconds. Iris let him finish. Then she placed his operations report on the table beside the audit findings. "You had access to the same information we pulled in 48 hours, she said. "You chose not to look. I made a judgment call. You made a convenient call," she said. "There's a difference. And the people who complained to us deserved a judgment call, not a convenient one." Curtis went quiet. Joy asked him to wait outside while they called legal. By 11 a.m., all 4 were gone. The lobby didn't know yet. The morning was still moving. Luggage rolling across marble, coffee cups steaming at the complimentary station, the jukebox in the restaurant playing something low and unhurried. The orchids in the vase were still white, still arranged exactly so. Iris walked to the front desk. She stood behind it for a moment. On the other side, the side she'd rarely stood on at this property, a woman walked through the revolving door, mid-50s, Latina, pulling a suitcase with one hand and a tote bag over her shoulder. She looked around the lobby with the cautious look of someone who wasn't sure what kind of welcome she was about to get. The associate at the next station hesitated, new, first week, visibly unsure of protocol with no manager present. "Good morning," Iris said. "Welcome to the Callaway Grand. Do you have a reservation with us?" The woman looked at her, then smiled, relieved, the way people smile when they find out the room is warm. "I do," she said. "Flores, Maria Flores." "Let's get you checked in," Iris said. 2 weeks later, Iris held an all-staff meeting in the hotel's ballroom. Every person who worked at the Callaway Grand, from the housekeeping team to the front desk to the kitchen line, was there. She stood at the front of the room without a podium. She'd considered bringing notes. She didn't. She told them what she had seen. Not as an accusation, as a report. This is what I observed. This is what the data showed. This is what 34 of your former guests experienced and wrote down and submitted and were never contacted about again. She told them about Audrey Simmons, about the flat water and the cold chicken, about Brett's verification call that no protocol required and Ray's 47 complaint forms marked resolved with no action. She told them she had hired an outside firm to redesign the service training program from scratch. It would take 60 days. Every person in the room would go through it, not the front desk only. Everyone. She told them that a new anonymous complaint system would go directly to her office, bypassing every layer of management, because the last layer of management had not done its job. She told them that 4 people were no longer with the company and that their own jobs were not in jeopardy as long as they understood one thing. Every guest who came through that revolving door was going to be treated as if they mattered. Because they did. Regardless of the suitcase they were carrying, or the shoes they were wearing, or any story anyone told themselves about what kind of guest they were looking at. You are the difference, she said, between a person arriving somewhere and a person arriving home. The room was quiet in the way rooms go quiet when something has actually landed. Then a woman near the back raised her hand. Iris recognized her. Paula Reeves, a housekeeper, mid-60s, had been at the property for 9 years, one of the employees who had submitted a complaint about Ray Costello 2 years ago that disappeared into Curtis Albright's filing system. Are you going to stay? Paula asked. Or are you going back to corporate? The room went stiller. I'm staying, Iris said, for as long as it takes. Paula Reeves nodded once. The kind of nod that means, okay, I'll believe it when I see it, but I'm willing to see it. That was enough. 3 months later, the Callaway Grand's TripAdvisor rating had not just recovered. It had risen to the highest point in the property's history. The reviews talked about the staff, specifically, by name. They talked about the front desk associate who remembered a guest's coffee order from the day before. The server at Ember who had replaced Taylor, a man named James, who came from a Jamaican family in Decatur and had spent 4 years trying to get a shot at a restaurant like this, who had been written up 5 times on a different feedback form for going over and above. They talked about Paula Reeves, who had been promoted to head of housekeeping operations, a position that had not existed before Iris created it, who was now running a team of 30 with the kind of competence that makes everyone around her quietly better. And in the corner of the lobby, every Tuesday morning, a woman in a floral church cardigan sat in the wingback chair by the window with her coffee. Audrey Simmons had come back. Iris had called her personally. Not through a PR contact, not through a form letter. She had called, and she had listened, and at the end of the call, Audrey had said, "Young lady, you don't have to give me anything. Just make sure it doesn't happen to the next person." Iris had promised, and then she had given her a lifetime loyalty status anyway, because some promises deserve to be made twice. One morning in November, Iris walked through the lobby at 7 a.m. before the day staff arrived. Suit now. Heels quiet on the marble. She stopped at the front desk and straightened the pen caddy, which was 3 inches from where she liked it to be. Habit. She looked at the lobby the way she always looked at it. The orchids. The amber light. The door still turning as early guests came and went. She thought about the backpack in her closet. She'd kept it. She'd probably go out again in 6 months, somewhere else in the portfolio. Some other property where the rating had dipped 0.4 of a point and the operations report said nothing systemic. She knew now that there was always a system. You just had to be willing to look like you didn't belong until you found it. I think about Audrey Simmons a lot, the way she stood at that counter and waited. The way her fingers tightened on her purse strap and her chin went down and she just left. Without making a scene, without demanding anything. Because she had learned, over 71 years, how to leave rooms that weren't built for her. And I think about the fact that it took someone with a key card in her pocket and a last name on the corporate account to make that room rebuild itself. That's not how it should work. It shouldn't take power to be treated with dignity. It shouldn't take a hidden camera or a $2,800 suite or a last name anyone recognizes. But here's what I also know. The Paula Reeveses of the world are everywhere. The people who see it, who try to say something, who file the complaints that disappear into drawers. They are everywhere, and they are almost always the reason the mission survives when the leadership fails it. So let me ask you something. Have you ever been Audrey? Have you ever stood at a counter and felt the weight of someone deciding who you were before you spoke? Or have you ever been Paula, the one who saw what was happening and said something, even when no one seemed to be listening? Drop it in the comments. I read everyone. If this story hit you, hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe if you're not already. We're here every week with stories about the people who stay quiet, the people who speak up, and what happens when the truth finally has nowhere left to hide. Here's what I'll leave you with. The real test of who you are isn't who you're kind to when it's easy. It's who you see when they're standing right in front of you, and nothing is requiring you to see them. Be the person who sees them anyway.